The first time Sophie called me Mama E, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was 4. Her cheeks sticky with jelly, her little fingers clutched around a piece of toast like it was gold. I had just wiped her face and kissed her forehead the way a mother might have done if she had one. She wrapped her arms around my neck, her voice barely a whisper against my ear. Mama E, no one had ever called me that before. The sound of it cracked something open inside me. It was quiet and soft, but it bloomed like light through a closed curtain. From that moment I was hers, not because the court said so, not because there was blood between us, but because she needed someone to love her like a mother would. And I did. I loved her the way I imagined her mother would have, fierce, whole, without condition or pause. Her mother, my sister, died in a rainstorm. A truck ran a red light and the world never looked the same again. Her father lasted 6 months after the funeral, said he couldn't do it, couldn't be both, couldn't breathe inside that house, so he left. Left Sophie in a yellow dress on my porch with a suitcase too big for her and a note I never showed her. I was 39, unmarried, no children. I had a quiet job at the town library and a cat named Beans, and then I had Sophie. At first, I told myself I was just helping, just filling in, just until he came back. But he never did. And one night, while tucking her in, she looked at me with her soft brown eyes and said, "I hope you never leave like everyone else." That was the moment I stopped being her aunt and became her everything. I worked mornings at the library and cleaned houses at night. I made every dollar stretch. There were months we lived on soup and hope. But I made sure Sophie never saw it. Every school trip, every backpack, every dentist appointment, I was there. I sewed her Halloween costumes, helped her memorize spelling words, packed her lunches with little handwritten notes. Love, Mama E, she always called me that. Even when she was mad, even when she was a teenager and rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Even when she slammed doors, she still said goodnight, even when she left for college. That goodbye, it ripped through me like wind through a screen door. She hugged me at the bus station, kissed my cheek, said, "I'll make you proud." And then she was gone. The house felt different after that, too quiet, too clean. I kept her room just the way she left it. I sat on her bed some nights just to feel something that wasn't silence. She called less over time, said school was hard, said she was tired, said, "Don't worry, Mama E, I'm okay." And I believed her, because that's what mothers do. They believe, they hope, they wait. I told everyone in town how well she was doing, that she was going to be a doctor, that she was engaged to a young man she met during residency. From a good family, she said. I never asked what that meant. Maybe I should have, but I didn't, because I trusted her. I thought after all we'd been through, she'd never forget where she came from. I thought the love I gave her would always be enough. I was wrong. The wedding invitation came in a thick ivory envelope, gold lettering, embossed edges, formal enough to make me feel small before I even opened it. It was addressed to Ms. Lane Foster. No Mama E. No note inside, just directions, dates, a dress code, and a tiny line at the bottom, reception seating, friends and family section. See, I stared at that word, friends. Not family. I read it again, hoping it would change. It didn't. Still, I told myself it was a mistake, a printing error, a detail Sophie didn't oversee. I hung the invitation on the fridge anyway. Right beside the picture of her in kindergarten, missing her 2 front teeth and holding a sunflower twice her size. I bought a navy dress for the wedding. Soft silk, modest neckline, the kind of thing a mother might wear. I even wore the silver necklace Sophie gave me when she turned 12. The one with a little charm that read, "Forever." Funny how things change. I arrived early, hands shaking as I held a small wrapped gift and a card that took me 3 nights to write. I was directed to my seat by a young woman with a clipboard. She didn't smile, she didn't ask who I was. She pointed to the second to last row near the aisle, not among the family, not even close. "Friends and mentors," she said briskly. My mouth opened but no sound came out. I sat down, slowly, quietly, like someone being punished in church. Row by row, the other seats filled with distant coworkers, childhood neighbors, one of her old piano teachers. In the front, on the bright white chairs with golden bows, sat Sophie's future in-laws, her bridal party, her real family. Her father was there. He hadn't aged well, hair thinner, eyes sunken, but he smiled as they seated him next to the groom's mother. No one blinked at his presence. No one questioned his role, he left, and still he got a seat that said you belong. I clenched the card in my hand so hard it bent at the corners. I felt the heat rise to my face, but I held it in. This wasn't the place for tears. The music started, everyone stood, and there she was, my Sophie, walking down the aisle in a lace dress that shimmered like water under moonlight. She looked beautiful, radiant. Not once did her eyes scan the crowd for me. After the ceremony, I made my way to the reception hall. Again, I was directed to a side table near the catering station. Overflow seating, they said. I stood for a moment, unsure whether to scream or leave. Then I saw her, Sophie, laughing near the cake table, glass of champagne in hand. I walked over, dodging servers and guests, my heart pounding in my chest like a warning bell. She saw me coming, her smile faltered. I stopped in front of her, held out the card. "Hi, sweetie." She looked around, then stepped closer. "Elaine," she said, her voice low, tight. "Now's not a good time." I blinked. "Elaine." Her eyes darted to a woman beside her, someone from the groom's family, I think. "Please," she whispered, "can we talk later?" My hand shook. "You didn't list me as family." She flinched. "It's complicated." "No, it's not," I said, voice breaking. "It's simple. I raised you. I gave you everything." She touched my arm gently, like I was a child having a tantrum. "Please don't do this here." I stepped back. Guests were watching. But I didn't care. "I'm not doing anything," I said, barely louder than a breath. "You already did it." She said nothing. I dropped the card on the table beside her. Then I turned and walked out, heels clicking against polished wood, every step louder than the last. No one followed me, not her father, not anyone. I didn't cry in the parking lot. I sat behind the wheel of my car, both hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the dashboard. The engine wasn't running, the air was still. My heart wasn't. I told myself not to cry, not for her, not here, but the tears came anyway. Hot, silent, stubborn. I had worn perfume that day, the one Sophie used to say smelled like vanilla and warmth. I remembered her climbing into my lap at 9 years old, burying her face in my neck, whispering, "You always smell like home." What a cruel thing to forget. I drove home on autopilot, no music. No sound but the hum of tires and the soft cracking of my own disappointment. When I got home, I sat on the couch in the dark, still wearing my navy dress. I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't take off the necklace. I just sat there, listening to nothing. I remembered how many times I had shown up for her, how many nights I stayed awake with a cold rag pressed to her forehead, whispering lullabies when she had the flu. How many times I taped her science projects back together at 2 in the morning. How many times I clapped the loudest in school assemblies when no one else showed up. She called me her whole world once. She wrote it on a drawing when she was 6. Stick figures holding hands, a heart drawn in pink crayon between us. I had kept that drawing, framed it even. It was still hanging in the hallway just outside the kitchen. I walked over to it now. I stared at it for a long time, then I took it down. I didn't break the frame, I didn't burn it. I just wrapped it in a towel and placed it gently into a box, along with the necklace and the photos. And the notes she used to leave in my lunch bag. "You're the best, Mama E. I love you. Thank you for the mac and cheese." I put them all in the same box, and I closed the lid. The next morning, I called the library and told them I wouldn't be coming back. Not today, not tomorrow. I needed to breathe, to get away from the town where every corner held a memory that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. By noon, I had packed a suitcase, one suitcase. I took clothes, a few books, and the old Afghan my grandmother crocheted, the one I used to wrap around Sophie when she fell asleep on the couch. I didn't take anything she'd given me. Not the locket, not the cards, not the framed diploma I paid to frame. By 3 o'clock, I was on the road. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it had to be somewhere else. Someplace quiet. Someplace I could start over without hearing her voice in the walls. I stopped 2 towns over, checked into a little roadside inn with mustard yellow curtains and creaky floors. The woman at the front desk asked how long I'd be staying. I said I'm not sure yet. Then I went to my room, sat on the bed, and finally exhaled. It was the first deep breath I'd taken in days, and somewhere in that quiet breath something shifted, something let go. The town was small. 1 grocery store, 1 gas station, 2 churches, and a bookstore that smelled like cedar and dust with a crooked sign that read chapter and verse. I found myself wandering in on my second day, The bell over the door jingled like it had been waiting for me. The woman behind the counter looked up from her crossword. She had short gray hair and glasses that kept slipping down her nose. "You look like someone who needs a good story," she said. I gave her a tired smile. "That obvious?" She nodded. "The good ones always walk in with a silence around them." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I felt it. She introduced herself as June. We talked about books, about how coffee tastes better when you're reading something sad, and how some endings don't tie themselves up neatly but still matter. When I told her I was just passing through, she said, "Well, if you end up staying, I could use help shelving on Tuesdays." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I rented a small apartment above a bakery. The windows fogged up in the morning and smelled like cinnamon by 6 a.m. I liked that. The walls were bare, but the space felt honest. No ghosts, no memories pinned to the furniture, just 4 rooms and quiet air. I unpacked slowly. Folded my clothes with care, hung one small photo on the dresser, a picture of me alone in front of the Grand Canyon, taken years ago by a stranger who had said, "You have a peaceful face." I had forgotten I ever looked that way. On Thursday, I found a thrift shop near the edge of town. I bought 2 mugs, a lamp, and a used journal with soft leather and a ribbon bookmark. That night, I opened it and wrote one sentence on the first page. "She left me behind, but I am not lost." Then I underlined it, twice. At the bakery downstairs, the girl behind the counter started saving me the corner cinnamon roll each morning. "You remind me of my aunt," she said. She was tough, soft too, like velvet wrapped around a spine. I smiled. "That's a nice thing to be." She winked. "It is." I didn't tell her why I came here, didn't tell her what I left. Some wounds don't need witnesses. They just need time. One night it rained hard. I lay in bed, listening to the drops hit the window in waves. For a moment I reached for my phone, out of old habit, ready to text Sophie like I always used to during storms. She hated thunder as a child. I used to crawl into her bed, hold her tight, and whisper, "It's just the sky talking." But my phone stayed dark, no messages, no missed calls. She hadn't reached out, not even once. I stared at the ceiling. The ache in my chest didn't come from anger. It came from the echo of everything I didn't say at that wedding, all the words I'd swallowed for her comfort, all the truth I abandoned just to stay close. And she still pushed me away. I turned on the lamp, sat up, picked up the journal, and wrote a new sentence. "I loved her more than she'll ever understand, and less than I deserved to love myself." And I closed the book and turned off the light. And let the storm pass without reaching for anyone. I started helping at the bookstore on Tuesdays. June didn't ask many questions, and I didn't offer many answers. She showed me where the stepladder was, how to alphabetize poetry, and how to make the coffee strong enough to keep regulars coming back. By the second week, I had my own mug. By the third, a key. There was something healing about touching spines of old books, rearranging shelves, creating order in a small, dusty corner of the world. No one cared who I was, where I came from, only that the coffee was hot and the receipts added up. And for once, that was enough. On a rainy Wednesday, June found me staring at a display of children's books. "You okay?" she asked gently. I nodded, just remembering. She didn't push. But after a pause, she said, "You know, there's a lot of love in remembering, even when it hurts." I didn't answer, but I thought about that for the rest of the day. I wrote more in the journal now, late at night, early in the morning. Sometimes while waiting for bread to toast, I didn't write about her name anymore, didn't call her my niece, didn't even write Sophie. She became the girl I raised. The girl who left. It made the sentences cleaner. Easier to survive. One afternoon, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address, just my name on the envelope in familiar, careful print. I opened it with shaking fingers. "Dear Mama E. I know I hurt you. I know I should have stood up for you. I don't have excuses, just shame, but I also have memories of soup when I was sick, of lullabies, of the smell of your sweater when I cried into it. I didn't forget. I just got scared of who I used to be. You made me who I am, and I hope someday you'll let me say thank you face to face. Love. Sophie." I read it 3 times, folded it carefully, set it aside, and cried. Not the silent, controlled tears I'd grown used to. This time I let it happen. I let it wreck me, and when I was done, I stood up, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window with the letter on my lap. I didn't know what I would say to her or if I would say anything at all. But I knew this: I had survived the forgetting, I had lived through the silence, and I had come back to myself not because she asked me to, but because I owed it to the woman who stayed when no one else did. Me, I didn't write back, not right away. I placed the letter inside the journal, folded between pages I hadn't filled yet. It felt safe there, not forgiven. Not erased, just placed gently where it could rest. There's a difference between holding on and holding something carefully. I needed time to learn that. The days passed quieter after that. I kept working at the shop, made the coffee, laughed with June, rearranged the fiction section even when no one asked me to. At night, I still wrote, but the entries changed. Less grief, more noticing. The way the air smelled after rain, the sound of shoes against hardwood. The peace of waking up and not needing to explain myself to anyone. I was becoming someone new. Or maybe I was just peeling back the layers and finding the old me, the one who'd been buried under all that giving. One Sunday, I went to the market. A quiet place with apples in wooden crates and honey jars lined up like soldiers. There, by the flower stall, I saw a little girl pick up a sunflower taller than she was. She looked up at the woman beside her and said, "Let's get this for Mama." Her voice was soft, but it hit something inside me like thunder. I turned and walked away, leaving my basket behind. Back in the apartment, I sat by the window and let the memory hit. Sophie, age 6, her hands too small for the bouquet, carrying sunflowers she'd picked from the side of the road. "This is for you," she said, "because you're like the sun. You make things grow." I hadn't thought about that moment in years, but it came back so clearly it felt like the present. I didn't cry, I just closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Not to her, to that version of me. The one who stayed soft, the one who kept loving even when it hurt. The next day, June handed me a flyer. "Community Center's starting a writing group," she said. "Thought you might want to join or lead." I laughed. "I'm not much of a writer." She raised an eyebrow. "I've seen that journal." I shrugged. "That's just processing." She leaned in. "Sometimes processing is what saves the rest of us." I went. Tuesdays and Thursdays in a small room with flickering lights and folding chairs. 6 women, 1 man, all with notebooks and something to say. We wrote prompts, shared pieces, read aloud with shaky voices. And in the quiet that followed, I saw nods, heard breath catch, felt connection. I read one of my entries once, about silence, about a girl who forgot who raised her, about a woman who found her voice by writing it down. No one asked who it was about, they didn't need to, they just listened, and that was enough. That night I opened the journal and wrote, "My grief was never about losing her, it was about losing the idea that love would protect me. But I don't need protection anymore, I just need truth, and I am finally living in it." I set the pen down, breathed in, and felt full for the first time in a long time. Spring arrived without asking permission. The bakery below me started using lemon in everything. Birds nested in the gutters outside my window. The bookstore switched its front display to paperbacks with pastel covers and titles about second chances. I wasn't sure if I believed in second chances, but I believed in blooming again, even if it was quiet, even if no one noticed, even if it came after a long winter. I started walking in the mornings. Just 30 minutes through streets that were slowly shaking off the cold. I'd pass the same old man sitting on a bench feeding squirrels with broken crackers from his coat pocket. He always nodded when I walked by, never spoke. It felt like a ritual, a quiet agreement between 2 people learning how to stay grounded. One morning he tipped his cap and said, "You carry peace with you." I stopped, smiled. I didn't used to. He nodded again. "Well, it's there now." In the writing group, people began bringing in pages of truth. One woman wrote about her daughter who never called. Another shared a letter she wrote to her husband but never mailed. The man in the group read poems about his dog and how grief finds its own rhythm. I shared less, listened more, but when I did speak, I noticed something had changed. My voice didn't shake anymore. I didn't need people to understand, only to hear me. June offered me a permanent part-time position at the shop. "You've already rearranged this place so many times, I figure you own half of it anyway." I laughed. "I'll take it." She handed me a ring of keys. "Welcome home." That word landed softer than it used to. Home, not where you started, not always where you were loved the most, but where your soul gets to exhale. I was building mine here, one Tuesday shift and journal entry at a time. The letter came on a Thursday, new handwriting. Inside was a single line, no greeting, no signature. I'm pregnant, I thought you should know. My hands trembled, not from pain. From the surprise of not feeling anything close to what I expected. No longing, no desperation, only a quiet, aching kind of release. I read the line again, then I set the letter down and said out loud to no one, I hope she does better with her own child. Not bitter, not cruel, just honest. I wouldn't be the grandmother, I wouldn't hold that baby, and that was okay, because not every door needs to stay open. Some need to be closed gently for the draft to stop. That night, I sat on the porch with tea in hand. I watched the street lamps flicker on one by one. I thought about the girl I raised, the one who danced barefoot in the kitchen, who cried when the bird hit the window. Who once told me I was the reason she believed in good people. That girl is gone now, but I kept the part of her that mattered, the part that taught me I could love without condition and survive without recognition. In June, the bookstore hosted a reading night. June called it Words That Saved Us. People came from all over town, retired teachers, teenage poets, one man who read from a love letter he never sent. I sat in the back, heart steady, hands folded. When it was my turn, I walked to the front with one page in my hand, not a speech, just something I had written 2 weeks earlier, sitting by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass like it had somewhere to be. I looked out at the room, cleared my throat, and read, I used to think love was enough to keep you close. That showing up meant I'd always have a place, but I learned that people can leave you even if you never left them. And sometimes the ones you raise will grow into people who no longer look back. Still, I choose softness, I choose stillness, I choose me. There was no applause at first, just silence, the heavy, sacred kind, then someone clapped. And then the rest followed, but the quiet meant more, it meant they felt it. After the reading, a young woman approached me. She looked barely 20, nervous eyes, chewed fingernails. She said, that was about your daughter, wasn't it? I hesitated, then nodded. My niece, I raised her. She swallowed. I haven't talked to my mom in 3 years, but hearing you made me want to. I placed a hand over hers. Write her, even if you never send it. Sometimes the healing is in the writing. She nodded, eyes glassy. We didn't say anything else. She walked away, and I stood there for a moment, still holding the heat of that moment in my chest. It felt like something had come full circle, not closed, but honored. That weekend, June brought out a dusty old guest book and put it on the counter by the register. For people to write what this place means to them, she said. She handed me the pen first. I flipped open to the first page. Wrote. This bookstore reminded me that not every ending is a loss. Some are a beginning that finally speaks. I left it unsigned. Some things are truer without names. The next morning, I went to the post office and bought one postcard. It had a photo of a cracked window with wildflowers growing through the frame. On the back, I wrote, wounds don't make me love less, they make me love wiser. No address, no name. I kept it tucked in my journal just for me. Summer deepened. The air smelled like cut grass and second chances. I started keeping fresh flowers on the table again, nothing fancy, daisies, baby's breath, one lavender stem when I could find it. I didn't do it for company. I did it because the house deserved softness even if I was the only one inside it. Especially then, August brought a heat that wrapped around your bones, the kind of warmth that made everything slow down. People moved quieter. The streets shimmered like memory, and I began to notice how much lighter my body felt when I wasn't carrying anyone else's silence. On a Tuesday, June called me into the back room with a strange smile. Someone left this at the counter for you, she said, handing me a small brown envelope. No name, just 2 words scrawled in blue ink. For Elaine. Inside was a photograph. A baby, maybe 3 months old, swaddled in a yellow blanket, eyes wide, cheeks full. I knew that blanket. I had sewn it myself. Years ago, before the girl I raised even thought about motherhood. Behind the photo was a sticky note. Her name is Ivy, she has your calm. S. That was it. No apology, no invitation, just a photo, a name, a note. I stared at the baby's eyes for a long time. She did look calm, steady, and nothing in me wanted to reach for more. I didn't feel loss, I didn't feel anger. I felt still, and then I smiled, not because I forgave her, but because I finally forgave myself for waiting, for hoping, for shrinking. That night I took the photo upstairs. I didn't frame it. I didn't put it on the wall, I tucked it into the journal behind every truth I had already written. It didn't belong in the center of my life, but it belonged somewhere, and that was enough. In the weeks that followed, I painted the kitchen. Soft green, the color of beginnings. I bought new mugs, gave away old linens, let light into corners I hadn't touched in years. I went to the lake one morning and let my feet dangle in the cold water. Birds danced low above the surface. A couple argued gently on the dock nearby, their voices soft as apology. I closed my eyes, breathed in. I thought of all the versions of me I had been. The woman who cooked 2 dinners a night because a child was picky. The woman who clipped coupons to stretch $1. The woman who clapped from the back row and never asked to be in the photo. The woman who walked away from a wedding with no one at her side. And now this woman, alone but not empty. I whispered to the water, thank you for carrying her. And I meant it. One evening, June and I closed the shop early and sat on the floor sorting old poetry books. She looked at me and said, you're different now. Different how? I asked. You're not waiting for someone to call you worthy anymore. You just are. I leaned back, the soft weight of her words sinking in. You think people can tell. Oh, they can't help it, she said. People can smell peace, and honey, you smell like peace. I laughed so hard I cried. Real tears this time, the kind that cleanse, not break. And when I went home, I made tea, lit a candle, sat down at the window, and began to write a new story, one where I was never the side character. The story I wrote that night turned into more than one page. I kept writing. Every evening after the bookstore closed, after the tea steeped, after the quiet settled in like an old friend, the pages came easily now. Not because I had all the words, but because I no longer feared what would happen if I used them. I wrote about women who stayed too long, about women who left too late. About the ones who gave too much and the rare few who learned to give it back to themselves. I wrote about the sound of shoes on hardwood floors, the ache of a refrigerator humming in a house with no laughter. The memory of a small hand grabbing mine in a parking lot years ago and calling me mama. I didn't write for Sophie. I didn't write for Ivy. I wrote for me. One afternoon, June knocked on my apartment door holding a pie and a question. We're hosting an author night at the shop, locals only. I want you to read something. I blinked. Me. She nodded. Yes, you. I'm not an author, I said. You are, she replied. You just forgot. I sat on the edge of my bed that night holding a stack of pages bound with a rubber band. All the nights, all the tears, all the sentences I bled onto paper right there in my hands. I picked the piece I wanted to share. It wasn't the prettiest, but it was true. The night of the event, the shop was packed, folding chairs in every aisle, people standing between the travel guides and the romance section. I wore the navy dress I once thought I'd never put on again. I stood at the podium with my heart steady, and I read, we think love is a rope, something that ties us together, but sometimes love is a gate. It opens, it lets someone walk in, and if you're brave enough, it lets you walk away. The room was still, then someone clapped, and then the rest followed, but it wasn't the applause I carried home, it was the moment of silence just before it, the moment where my words had weight and I knew they landed. After the event, the young woman from the writing group came up to me. She looked stronger than before. Your stories helped me leave someone, she said, someone who never saw me. I reached out, held her hand. You did that, not me. But I wouldn't have believed I could if you hadn't said it first. I nodded, and in that moment I felt it, the full circle, the point of it all, not just surviving but transforming. I walked home under a sky that looked like it had been painted for me. Soft, open, endless, the air smelled like rain before it falls, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt like something had been returned, me, the version I thought I'd lost, the woman who gave, the woman who left, the woman who began again not because someone asked her to, but because she chose herself. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, lit one small candle, and wrote one last line in the journal. She let go of the child she raised, and in doing so, finally raised herself. Then I closed the book and began the rest of my life.